Yeah, so about 10 years ago, I was talking to one of our clients that was the CEO and chairman of a Fortune 500 company, this huge company. And he's just brilliant. And I said to him, what is your advice as we grow? So at the time, I don't know, we probably had like 25 or 30 employees. As we grow, what is your advice that we can keep our culture? And he said, and this is not what I expected. He goes, what you should do is you need to have a lot of small teams and no middle management. He said the whole reason corporate structure looks like it does is based out of the military in World War II and Korea and et cetera, where you had a lot of these people returning from the war that went into corporate America or became management consultants. And this idea that you have a general and below that you have, full board colonels and lieutenant colonels and then majors and captains and all these divisions and battalions and squadrons and all this thing. Because it was really based on this concept that goes back to, when there was cavalry, how many, horses could a commander see in battle, right? Or, how many fighting men could you see? And this is like why you had this pyramid structure. And he goes, but it's ridiculous and it doesn't work on how you manage people. Instead, you need to have a bunch of smaller teams of people you trust that are little experiments of trial and error. And you take the best ideas from these teams. And he goes, do not have middle management. He goes, because this military way of thinking, you have to have all these layers of officers. He goes, don't do that. It cripples and kills companies. And, that really spoke to me. And again, I don't have like carte blanche, it's a lot of people and a lot of culture and, business partners and everything. So it's not just me, but we all talked about that and other things that we had read and said, yeah, we're going to create this company that's very flat. We're not going to have a lot of hierarchy. We're not going to have a lot of command and control. And we're going to allow each of our partners, our principals, to follow their own OODA loop, which I didn't know was an OODA loop. I only learned about that recently. So yeah, absolutely.
Wow. I mean, so we hear a lot of times that we're stuck in the, our school system is based on the factory worker, but I'd never heard the concept of the bureaucracy inside of corporations. But you see that it like so much of the work that gets done is done by the very, very bottom of the hierarchical structure. For sure. And then everybody else is just absorbing some amount of work, and then most of it is dissipated as heat. Yeah. Yeah. And people don't, like, what modern man says, I want to go work inside of a bureaucracy? Like, no one, right? Because you don't have like you had said, the benefit of being outside of a bureaucracy is you can say, hey, there's the goal we're trying to get over. Now I can do anything I want to get over that. Yeah. That's fulfilling. That's when you get to find the click and you get to take those dopamine hits that you get from discovering a pattern and making it happen. But in a bureaucracy, you see the click and then it's 4 months before anything can happen because of it.
Yeah, and bureaucracy, I agree with my client and read a bunch more about it. I think it does kill companies. And then once you get to a certain size, it really becomes difficult. You may be aware of Dunbar's number that says, you can really only kind of know 150 people. And then there's different levels. Like you can only have a handful of like really close friends, then you have other friends and acquaintances, et cetera. But you really can only know the name of and something about around 150 people. And whether that's right or wrong, I think it's
in my experience, it's totally accurate.
It may not be exactly 150, but that's exactly right. And I think when you look at companies, there is this tipping point once you start getting 100, 150, 200 people where you don't know everybody anymore. And you don't, in our company with 55 people, not only do I know everybody's names, I know probably every single person's kids' names, and I know their spouses' names, and I know in general where they live, and I know something about them. And I go to lunch with everybody, pre-pandemic, I would go to lunch with everybody in our company once or twice a year. And during the pandemic, I have people over to my house to sit outside and, sometimes we watch Blues games, sometimes we just cocktail. So you can do that, but once you get beyond a certain size, you can no longer do it. And some companies have taken this to heart, and I believe it was the company Gore-Tex. All their plants and offices and divisions, they've kept to 150 people. And this is partly because of this Dunbar's number. And they said, as a huge company, we're going to have more than 150 people, but we want to have these smaller enclaves of 150 people that work together as a team. And I just think that's so important. And it's interesting in YPO, again, I've learned so much from YPO, but I'll talk to people and it seems like the main goal for their company is growth. Like they want to get bigger and bigger and bigger and, make more and more money. And that may be well and good, but I always ask the question, well, why? Like, why do you want to grow and why do you want to get bigger? Because it sounds to me like a lot of the things that bigger companies have to deal with are horrible. Like, and this is something I've learned as we've gotten bigger, 55 employees, 60 clients. It means that there's almost always a problem. There's some employee, there's always some issue or an issue with a client, or there's always something that's going on. And, back when we had, say like 30 people and 30 clients, it was like half the number, right? So as you get bigger, there's just more room for you have so many more interactions. I mean, it's probably exponential. So it's probably 4 or 8 times as big when you have 60, because you have so many more interactions and so many more people to manage and deal with. And I just can't imagine wanting to work in a place that has, hundreds of people, which I have before. I used to work at Arthur Andersen, and it was huge. And
the biggest challenge, though, is we live in a world that is rewarding economies of scale.
Yeah.
And so quality becomes this very difficult thing. You know, so a lot of people that I interact with all the time are farmers, and they want to keep their farm as a family farm. They don't want to have to grow, but in order to be able to keep up with the margins of the world, you have to go as big as you possibly can. Yeah. And the only limiting factor is, like, for a dairy farm, people don't realize this. Eventually there is a falling off that you just can't bring hay in from far enough away, or you just can't get rid of the manure. So you can only pack so many dairy cows in.
Oh, really?
But outside of that, right, you can just we'll just keep adding farm, field after field after field. We'll just buy more combines. We'll hire more workers. So this expansion, whereas most people want to have that kind of quality life. How do you think this gets meted out in a modern world?
Well, actually, one of our prior conversations, we talked a bit about Peter Thiel's concept of secrets, right? So this is something that you believe, and it's not just that you believe it and others don't, but it's almost like if you talk about it, somebody else is going to think it's crazy. So in one of my favorite discussions with this, it's Ben Horowitz of Andreessen Horowitz, and he gave the commencement speech at the Columbia University Engineering School, probably like 2015, 2016. The entire speech is just amazing. I'd highly recommend anybody listening to look it up on YouTube. But at about minute 5, he talks about the idea of secrets. And he says, okay, what I am is I'm a venture capitalist, and I invest in companies. And let me talk about what I do in terms of ideas. If someone comes to me and they say, my idea is I want to make cell phone batteries last longer. He's like, that is an amazing idea, and I am not going to invest in your company, because everybody thinks that's a good idea. So like Panasonic and Samsung and Apple and everybody's going to be doing that. So I'm not going to invest in that. He goes, but I'll give you an example. He goes, a few years ago, I had somebody by the name of Brian Chesney come into my office, and he said, I have this secret. And the secret is I've been renting out an air mattress in my living room. And I've done some research, and I found out that it used to be, back before we had cars and planes and trains, that people stayed at inns. And because they didn't travel very far, they knew what the inn was going to be like. They'd go, oh, it's Gertrude's Inn. I know that's pretty nice, and that's better than Sam's Inn. So you knew where you were staying. But then as we became more mobile, you needed to know the quality of where you're staying. So that's when you started getting Holiday Inns and Howard Johnson's and Ritz-Carlton's and everything, because you know the level. Like if you stay at a Courtyard by Marriott, which I often do when I travel, I know what I'm getting. But what's happened now with the internet is you don't need that any longer, because you can see it online, you can have reviews. So my idea is I want people to start renting out rooms in their house. And Ben Horowitz said, Ryan, that is a horrible, horrible idea. Like what if you rent out your room to a serial killer? And he goes, but it's fascinating, tell me more. And he goes, so of course I invested in it, and it's Airbnb, and it's an amazing investment. So you have to have, to really be successful, you have to have a secret. And where I'm coming around to your question, our company's secret is that there's a trade-off in business between customization and scalability. It's true probably in every business, but especially in financial services. So people move towards scalability because it's more profitable. But our secret is we don't do that. We stay as custom as we can possibly be. And the secret is that's a really good business, and it's quite profitable. and almost nobody else is doing.
Thanks for checking out this podcast short. If you like this interview, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button and hit that bell so you always get notified about this podcast. And if you're really interested in conversations like this, you may want to consider joining the Articulate Ventures Network. To find out more, go to network.articulate.ventures.